Go. I say, go away, boy. You bother me.
Start talking.
Welcome to Mountaineer Rants. It's good to see you all again.
I'm Paul. This is Terry. We're here this week for Texas Tech.
We're going to preview the Texas Tech game. And hopefully we'll be as right about this as we were the Baylor game. Not tooting our own horn or anything.
Our horns need to be tooted. We're pretty good. Yeah, and we challenge you to defy that.
Please comment and tell us if you don't think we are.
The experts said we were going to lose to Baylor, and we didn't. The experts said we might not win against Virginia Tech, and we did big time. The experts are wrong. Listen to us. Now, the experts will tell you that there's only a 41% chance of us beating Texas Tech.
You know, that line keeps jumping up. More and more money comes into Texas Tech, and that line keeps going and favoring them more and more. I think we got something in store for them, personally, but that's my opinion, of course.
Let's start with a little history. The Mountaineers are 6-5 against Texas Tech all time. That includes a win at a neutral site back in 1937. The two teams didn't meet again until West Virginia got in the Big 12. It's been streaky since then. They won the first two contests. West Virginia won the next 5, and now Tech has won the last 3 in a row.
By the way, did you know that John Denver went to Texas Tech?
I did not.
He did. He went to Texas Tech. He wrote a song about West Virginia. And actually, there's one of those people out there that's got the John Denver trophy, whoever wins this game. You ought to check that out.
We have storylines, too.
We know football,
We're
and
not
we know
just
storylines.
Stats, and we've got storylines. Now, last year, Tech began 3-0. And they had a dominating victory over Houston, which was a ranked team. And then in week 4, they got clobbered by Texas. And then the following week, they upset the Mountaineers. We lost 23-3 to
23-20.
23-20, you're right. We outgained them by 100 yards. We were even in the turnover battle. And we weren't even bad on third downs. But some would say that we choked on key plays, including a pass into the end zone by Jared Dagey to Neal Brown that missed, and they ended up beating us with a field goal.
For what it's worth, too, you know, they're coming into this game after a bye, and this is the 3rd year in a row that they've come into our game after a bye. And if you remember that game in Morgantown last year, they came in after a bye with a different quarterback that hadn't played at all. Had not played and ran the ball more and did things that we weren't ready for, punched us in the mouth early in the game. And we fought back, but we couldn't overcome it.
Let me give you a little hint, too. Our coach is a very nerdy guy.
Cerebral,
and
how about
studies,
that?
There you go. He studies these things, and he does a chess match against other teams. So he's at a disadvantage when somebody throws a new quarterback at him, or when there's not much tape on him, or there's no coach in there. Right. He's at a disadvantage. It's not what he likes to do. He likes to know what's coming and scheme for it. And that's where the off weeks favor them and not so much
He
us.
made the point in his press conference of saying they changed their offense. They changed things in their offense week to week, too. So we've got to look out for that with our defense that's not been performing at a high level already this year.
But let's talk a little bit about what Texas Tech has done. They've been playing a very tough schedule.
They have.
They started out against Murray State. They beat them 63-10. Then they played number 25 Houston, and they won in double overtime against Houston. That's former West Virginia coach.
What's that guy's name? D.H.
Dana Holgerson down there, and that was this year.
Yes.
Shao, I think he's pronounced Shao, that's their quarterback, was sidelined after an injury, so he didn't play. They had a backup quarterback. And they did things like convert a 4th and 20 in that game with their receiver Bradley getting a lot of catches.
And that backup quarterback in that game was Donovan Smith, and that's the big quarterback who can throw it, and he can run it too. But he's big and strong. He runs it better than he throws it.
And they were geared up for Houston. Houston and them both played the same kind of run-it-up flag ball, rack up the points game. Then they won.
I think they won that game with Donovan Smith running it in for a touchdown in the overtime. But anyway, go ahead.
Yep. Then they played number 16 NC State. They lost that game. They had NC State had 4 sacks and 4 takeaways, and they lost that game 27-14.
Probably the worst they played this year was
Yep.
against North Carolina State.
Yep. Smith had 300 yards, but they only had 53 yards in rushing, and they were intercepted on a 4th down and one point hard luck. Then they played number 22 Texas, and they won against Texas in overtime.
They ran 100 offensive plays. They were 6 of 8 going forward on 4th down. They also won it in overtime when they forced a fumble by Bijan Robinson, probably the best runner in the Big 12, and they scored points. They wore Texas down and won that game at home. They did a good job.
I thought they taught us how to beat Texas. You hang around. They were 17 points behind going into the 4th quarter. They got a couple of quick scores. They took it into overtime, and they beat Texas.
They made Texas mad. We had to go down to play Texas the next week, and they beat our tails.
Texas got mad. Then
first half
our
we
game
weren't
was
ready.
a must-win. Then they played number 25, Kansas State, and they lost that one 37-28. Again, they had 359 yards passing and only 114 yards rushing. Smith was 34 out of 48.
They couldn't stop Adrian Martinez, the quarterback for Kansas State. Kansas State's going to run it with Deuce, and they're going to run it with that quarterback Martinez. They can't throw it very well.
And that's what they did. Kansas State ran for 343 yards. They only had 116 yards passing, and that's how West Virginia's got to beat them. We've got to run the ball.
That's our best chance of beating them.
Then they went at Oklahoma State, which was their 5th straight ranked opponent. They lost that game 41-31. They were trailing 20. Oklahoma State was trailing 24-20 at the halftime, but outscored Texas Tech 21-7 in the second half. And in that case, Texas Tech scored 14, and then in the second quarter 10, and then 7, and then 0, as Oklahoma State figured out how to stop them.
Look at this. Look at that string of 4 games now. At North Carolina State, Texas at home, at Kansas State, and at Oklahoma State. That's a tough road. And now they got a bye, and now they're at home against West Virginia, and it's homecoming.
Right. So they lost to the number 7, the number 14, and the number 20 team in the country, much like West Virginia, whose losses are to ranked teams. We played a tough schedule as well. Let's do a little bit of the nerd stuff.
Not as good as theirs.
No,
Kansas, I don't think, is ranked anymore, and Pittsburgh, I don't know, is ranked anymore.
Again, it'll move around. Houston may not be ranked anymore either. But let's talk a little bit about some of the nerd statistics. Texas Tech is ranked 102nd in the nation in rushing, offensive rushing.
They don't run it much.
They average 119 yards a carry. I mean, our running back had, 160 yards?
160 against Baylor.
Alone.
Just Tony Mathis.
But, so their rushing is poor, but their passing is number 2 in the nation.
And their main running back, Sir Roderick Thompson, is not a slouch. He's not a bad running back, but they don't choose to run it.
They don't run it. They pass about 2 or 3 times more often than they run.
They threw it 63 times against Oklahoma State. 63 pass plays.
Their passing game is averages 365 yards in the air. Now that's records in other places, but that's what they do.
That's what they do.
Now on defense, their rushing defense is 71st in the country. They allow 146 yards rushing, so they're really not that good at stopping the run. But they want to outscore you. They're not interested. They want you to run. They want to outscore you. Right. And their passing defense is 54th in the nation, allowing 220 yards a game. So their passing defense isn't bad. Now, again, those are the nerd stats. I watched them. Their defensive secondary, at least against Texas, wasn't great. They were out of position frequently, but they close fast when you make the reception, and they tackle you, and they knock you down. So They don't mind playing a flag ball game where both sides score a lot, but they play deep and then they come up and hit hard.
And they've got good pass rushers too, particularly the Wilson at number 19 is a very good pass rusher. He's got 6 sacks already this year. So,
West Virginia, by contrast, our rushing attack is 36th in the nation. We average 191 yards rushing. Theirs was 102. Our passing attack is 40th in the nation. We pass for 271 yards a game. They pass for almost 100 more yards. Our rushing defense is pretty good. We're 26th in the country. We only allow 112 yards, but our passing defense is 101st in the nation at 262. So there's your contrast. Their rushing is 102nd in the nation. They can't run. Our passing defense is 101st in the nation. We can't stop the pass. So what's going to happen in this game?
They're going to throw it, and we can't stop them, and we're going to run it, and they can't stop us.
Right.
That's what I see
That's
happening.
what we're looking at. As a general rule, their total plays on offense are 522 to opponents' 397. They average 484 yards a game, and they give up 367. So they give up a lot, but they take a lot themselves.
Here's what I like about it. I like the fact that if we cannot run the ball and establish it and control the game, we've got no chance, because they will score. They will throw it and they will score, because I don't trust our pass defense. So we're going to have to do that. But I'm going to give you one little other insight. Maybe I'll wait till later in the program.
Tyler Shao, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, was an Oregon player and transferred into Tech, and they were all excited about that. And then he broke a collarbone, and then the next year he got injured again. He may be back, but he hasn't really been a factor. So nobody's seen much of him. The other preseason fuss was made about a transfer named Taj Brooks, a preseason running back who was the second highest graded player on the entire team last year, but they're not giving it to him. They're using Thompson. In the Oklahoma State game, Thompson carried the ball for 20 carries for 87 yards. They only give it to Brooks 4 times.
Thompson's better. Brooks has carried the ball 53 times this year, but Thompson is just the better runner. And so he's been there for a couple of years, and he hurt us a couple times last year pretty bad too.
If it's not Shao, they then went to Donovan Smith, Donovan Smith is banged up, although they think he might be back. And then last week against Oklahoma State, or before that because they had a bye, they used Brehen, B-E-H-R-E-N, Brehen Morton, a freshman. And the guy did a pretty fair job for a freshman. He's also a fan favorite. So you may see him. So there's 3 quarterbacks may start for
Their coach is playing it coy and said if they're all healthy, you'll see all 3 of them. He said at the very least you'll probably see 2 of them. So they're going to do that stuff. They're all about that.
Our defense, unfortunately, has allowed 757 yards and 7 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. So that's what we've got to work on. If we're not going to horse race and score every time we get the ball, we're going to have to figure out ways to stop them. Now, we're not going to get 4 turnovers every week like we did against Baylor.
Fortunate, yes.
The other key stat, and this is based on historic, Texas Tech allows sacks. Yeah. They get sacked a lot. Last year, they ranked 101st in allowing sacks. This year, they've allowed 22 quarterback sacks.
Yep. 6 games. That's pretty bad.
My insight is that we generally have a defensive line. When we get in the big package, there's not a lot of speed that's going to sack people. They're going to stop the run, but except for Taj and a couple of linebackers, we're a little slower than that. We don't have the speed rusher.
But when you throw it as much as they do, you're going to get sacked more than most teams do too. So you got to look at that side of it also.
So in summary, I'd say they can't run, and I think we have a defensive line that can stop the run. Our defensive line's pretty darn good. If I were Neal Brown, I'd drop somebody extra back in coverage, and I'd trust my defensive line to stop the run. I'd dare them to run. Because if they're running the ball, then we're safe from the 25-yard and out pass. They're likely to pass anyway, and likely they're going to pass to Bradley. And we need to keep him in front of us, and we need to take him down quick when he catches it, and we need to keep heads up for some interceptions. We get a couple of turnovers and play like we did last week against Baylor. We can beat this team.
It's going to come down to the defense. Again, that's on both sides of the football. Because the offenses will put points up and they will get yardage and they will score. Which defense can get a stop or get a turnover? That's what's going to make the difference in who wins the game. And I'm going to tell you one other little thing, and be looking for this. The last 2 years we've played Texas Tech, they came into the game and punched us in the mouth early in the game. Down there 2 years ago, we were the better team, and without a doubt, we fought back, got it back to tied, and then Sam James fumbled the ball. They picked it up and scored. Defense created the turnover to win the game. Last year was the same way. They punched us in the mouth early, got ahead of us, and we fought back and just could never overcome it. If they jump out on us early in this game, it's trouble. I think the game will be won or lost. Unlike most games, they're won or lost in the fourth quarter. This one will be won or lost in the first quarter and the first part of the second quarter, because we will win the second half in this game. I believe that.
I'd love to say not so fast, but somebody else has done that.
That's right.
I tend to agree. I think this team is different from last year's team and the years before. The Mountaineer squad this year fights back. They're tough. They'll stick it out, and you're going to have a couple of scores up on us to beat us. Otherwise, we can beat you in the fourth quarter. What I worry about is breaks, and of course, I still worry about our defensive secondary. But I'm still glowing from Baylor, and I'm still very impressed with how the improvement of our defensive secondary, even though I think they need work, I was impressed with their improvement. I'm going to go out on a limb and say our secondary picks off one or two of the passes, and they turn in a performance. They don't have to shut them down, but they hold them down enough that JT and our improved receivers outscore them. I predict the Mountaineers are going to beat Texas Tech in Lubbock.
Here's what I'm going to say.
And John Denver can sing about that after the game.
We might have something for you if we do win that game, but I don't want to get too far ahead. I think we fight with them in the first half. If this game goes into halftime tied, or we're down 7 or even 10, I think we win the second half because, again, we run the ball and we control the ball. We cannot let them continue to hold the ball and throw the ball short and run a lot of plays because they'll wear us out.
Are you giving us an if then, or are you predicting a victory?
We're going to win this game.
Now we're talking.
We're going to win this game.
Like and subscribe. We like it.
Comment.
Give us a comment. Tell us what you think. If it's wrong, we'll tell you so. We'll recognize you on the air. Feel free to hit our website at mountaineerrants.com with a countdown to the game, or check us out on Facebook.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks.